This is my Strummer Design MP80 wallet, and in this video, I'll show you how I make it. The design is minimal. It's something between a card sleeve and a traditional bifold wallet. I carry just a few cards and maybe a little bit of cash, so this design was all I needed. It has 2 pockets for cards and 1 pocket for a few bills. One of the card pockets has this thumb slot for quickly drawing your most commonly used card. I will be using my strummer jig to make sure that my stitching holes are perfect, which is the foundation for great leather stitching. You can get one of these jigs and the plan for this wallet at strummerdesign.com. Okay, on to making the wallet. Once you've printed the plans, roughly cut out the pieces and glue them onto some heavier cardstock. You can use Bristol board, a cereal box, or whatever. Just don't use corrugated cardboard. The stiffer paper will make it easier to trace the shapes onto your leather pieces. Once the glue is dry, accurately cut out the pieces. Use a straight edge for the straight parts, and do take your time with the curves. The leather I chose for this wallet is a 2 to 3 ounce vegetable tan, which is about 2 millimeters thick. I also decided to make this one two-tone. The outside panel and bill pocket will be brown, and the card pockets, or inside panels, will be this olive green. Now we can trace the pattern on the leather pieces. It's good to use something heavy to hold the pattern steady as you make your stitching marks on the leather. For smaller pieces, you can just hold it with your fingers. Eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that I hadn't cut out the thumb slot in the pattern. I did this using a circular punch cutter, and I used my arbor press to make the cut. Once I cut out both circles, I just used my knife and a straight edge to connect them. If you don't have an arbor press, you can carefully use a mallet to make the cut. If you don't have the cutters, then you can use something like a coin or a metal washer to guide your knife along the curve. Now we can start cutting out the pieces along the tracing lines we made. Using a straight edge is key. Using a stainless steel ruler with a cork backing is a good choice because it helps prevent slipping. I, however, went a step further and modified my workbench so that I can quickly clamp down a thick piece of aluminum bar along the trace line. This really simplifies things for me. It lets me lock everything in place, then I can just focus on making a nice, clean, and perpendicular cut. When cutting the curves on the bill pocket, just take your time. You can do it all freehand, or you can use a washer or a coin of the right radius to guide your cuts. The pattern notes the radius of all the curves. For the thumb slot, it's back to the arbor press and that same round cutter. I use this walnut square to ensure that the leather and the pattern are aligned. I place the cutter on the edge of the pattern, then make the cuts. After cutting both circles, I connect them using my knife and a straight edge to complete the thumb slot. Now that the pieces are all cut out, we need to do some edge finishing for parts that will be too difficult to do after assembly. We also need to do a bit of roughing so that we can glue the bill pocket to the shiny surface of the inside panel. We can start with beveling the inside edges of the inside panels and the edge of the thumb slot. We can also bevel the curved edge of the bill pocket. The pattern can be used as a guide to make marks on the inside panel so that we know where to start and stop roughing. I like to use a straight edge and some 80 grit sandpaper to do the roughing. Use some tokonole to polish the edges we just beveled. You just dab it on, rub it in, then use a slicker to burnish. Now, if you want to go for extra shiny edges, you can do several rounds of tokonole and sanding working from 240 to 400 to 600 grit sandpaper or up, but that's completely up to you. Now we can start gluing up this wallet. Use the inside panel as a guide to make marks on the outside panel so that we know where to put the glue. Put some glue on both pieces and press them together, making sure the edges are flush. Here I'm using some spring clips to hold the pieces together as the glue dries. If you don't have clips, you can just place something heavy like a book on the work pieces until dry. We can repeat the marking, the gluing, the aligning, and the clamping for the other inside pocket, and then let everything dry for about 30 minutes. With the glue dry, it's a good time to make the rounded corners. I use this round corner punch, but if you don't have one of these, you can use that coin or washer I keep talking about. Okay, the wallet's all glued up and assembled. Now we can start preparing for stitching. The first thing to do is to make your stitch line. Use some calipers set to about 4 millimeters and scribe a line along the edge of the wallet where there will be stitching. Next, we need to set up the stitching iron jig. This jig is important because it will ensure that the stitching holes fall perfectly vertically through the workpiece. The result is that the stitching holes will be exactly the same on both sides. This sets the foundation for your stitching to be consistent and excellent on both sides as well. There are two things to configure on the jig. First, we need to set up for the thickness of the workpiece. We do this by resting the front feet of the jig on the workpiece. Then we stack some scrap leather the same thickness as the project. In this case, it's a bit of the brown and a bit of the green. We tuck that under the jig, loosen the back foot thumb screws, let the back foot fall to the work surface, and then tighten the thumb screws. That's it. The second thing to configure is to set the fence for the desired stitch line. You can affix your stitching iron to the jig using the integrated magnets. With the fence thumb screw loose and the workpiece bumped up against the fence, slide the jig body until the teeth of the iron are directly above the stitch line. Now tighten the fence thumb screw, and that's it. Now we can start making holes. The jig will guide your stitching chisel at 90 degrees to the workpiece, and the fence will ensure that the teeth of the iron will land consistently at the desired distance from the edge. Using the jig is simple. You just bump the jig up against the edge of the leather, lower your iron down to where you want to start making holes, hold the jig and the iron with one hand, and strike the iron with your mallet or maul. When you get to the edge of one of the sides, one of the feet of the jig will need to be supported using a bit of scrap at the same thickness as the workpiece. When you get to the portion of the wallet that has the bill pocket, you'll need to quickly reconfigure the height of the jig for 3 layers of leather. That's 2 of the brown and 1 of the green. Make your way around the workpiece and you'll end up with some great looking stitching holes like this. Now we can do some final edge finishing with the tokenole and the slicker, and once it's all stitched, it looks something like this. If you want to make this wallet, and or if you want one of these jigs, they're available at strummerdesign.com. Thanks for watching.